Welcome back to the deep dive. So picture this. You've got this amazing idea, maybe a product, maybe a movement, and you just know it needs to exist. But, well, you don't have the startup cash, no fancy office, not even a title. Sound familiar?
Okay. It's a classic scenario.
Exactly. So today, we're digging into the sources to figure out that huge hurdle. How do you lead when you don't have that formal title?
Yeah, it's the ultimate 0 to 1 challenge, isn't it? You have the spark, that's clear, but no formal power, often zero budget. And you need skilled people to show up, give their time, and, perform consistently, even with no paycheck in sight.
Right.
So our mission today is really to pull out the practical lessons from founders who've actually done this. We're looking at real-world stuff from places like TIDNetic, Skills Academy, and the Parental Initiative.
Okay, let's unpack that. We want to get past just the theory of leadership
Right.
and into the actual psychological tools and management techniques you need. We've got 3 big questions we want to answer for you if you're that aspiring leader. First, what's that initial spark? How do you get those first believers truly on board? Second, how do you choose the right people, when maybe passion and skills don't perfectly line up?
That's a big one.
And third, maybe the most critical, how do you keep people motivated and accountable when money's not part of the equation, especially after that initial excitement wears off?
Think of this as your practical guide. Building that founding team powered by inspiration and clarity, not just cash.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning. The genesis moment. You're ready to pitch. You need someone to give you their most precious resource, their time, knowing, like you said, no money involved, nothing attached. The sources say the real starting point isn't the business plan.
That's right. It's interesting. The founders we looked at, they suggest the foundational step isn't selling the idea itself.
Yeah.
It's about grounding yourself in this really deep, almost philosophical level of clarity. Clarity derived from identity.
Identity. Explain that.
Well, one founder, Desire, who launched TIDNetic, he put it really bluntly. He said the absolute first step for him was knowing my identity. For him, that was anchored in his faith, but the principle is broader.
So it's less about market research and more about self-awareness. Why is that personal foundation so crucial for rallying others?
Because it makes the message simple and authentic. If you have that radical clarity on who you are and why you're doing this specific thing, well, it just becomes much easier to talk about the vision compellingly. If you're not starting from that place of deep conviction, you're just reading points off a slide, and that doesn't inspire sacrifice.
I see. Okay. So the mission kind of becomes an extension of who the leader fundamentally is. Now let's compare that with Regine's experience with the Parental Initiative. Her path seems maybe more focused on tactical clarity, solving a very concrete problem.
Yeah, her experience shows that clarity doesn't have to be purely internal or spiritual. It can come from recognizing and wanting to solve profound pain. Now, with her other venture, Skills Academy, she did get a grant, and let's be honest, that makes finding people easier.
Sure, money helps.
But the Parental Initiative started differently. She became the believer herself after hearing this intense personal frustration from a close friend. This friend was just drowning, trying to manage 3 little kids, 5, 3, and 2 years old.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's instantly relatable for so many parents. It makes the need feel really urgent, not abstract.
Exactly. And Regine connected that friend's struggle immediately back to her own mother's experience years ago. She remembered her mom having to call at least 8 or 5 parents just to ask basic questions: which baby formula, which diapers actually work. That daily grind, that desperation for reliable support in one place, that proved the need for her platform.
Okay, so pulling those 2 together, Desire's internal conviction and Regine's external proof from pain, the takeaway seems to be that the spark isn't about convincing people the idea is cool.
Right.
It's about showing them it's necessary, either because it aligns with some deep truth or identity, or because it solves a really urgent, deeply felt problem.
Precisely. Find your conviction, find that necessary problem, and the mission itself becomes the magnet.
All right, so the mission's magnetic. People are starting to notice. Now comes the filtering stage. Selection. How do you figure out if a volunteer is actually the right fit? What are those green flags that tell you someone is truly committed, not just curious?
Desire offered a really simple but powerful litmus test here. The main green flag isn't their CV or their experience level. It's immediate, visible.
Well,
Excitement. And a clear willingness to jump into action. You can almost feel them leaning into it.
is there something specific you should listen for? Like a phrase?
Yes. The key phrase, the one that signals they're already taking ownership, is basically, "I love this, how do we start?" It's powerful because it's solution focused, right? Not passive interest.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying, okay, I'm not just waiting for instructions. I'm ready to build this with you.
That's a great flag. Okay, but here's that classic dilemma founders always hit early on. Passion versus skill. Let's say someone comes along, they've got incredible energy, they totally buy into the mission, but maybe they lack the specific technical skill you need right now. Maybe you need a coder, and they're not one. Isn't skill crucial?
It's a really practical, common question.
Yeah, because if they're passionate but the work isn't good, doesn't that hurt the mission early on?
It definitely can.
Yeah.
Regine's analysis gives us a way through this. She argues that passion is primary, but skill is absolutely non-negotiable for task assignment. Both matter hugely. But if you have to choose who to bring into that core team, passion wins.
Why, though? Because waiting for someone to learn a skill takes time, right? And early projects don't have much time.
True, but it's about commitment. If they have that deep passion, as Regine put it, that person has got me. They're committed to the long-term mission, not just ticking off a short-term task. Skill can be developed, or, importantly, you can align tasks to the skills they do have.
Okay.
And she gave this fantastic example. A volunteer, totally fired up about the initiative, just decided completely on their own to build a really complex app. It was an alumni tracking system.
Wow. Was that something they needed right then?
No, not at all. Regine said all she really needed at that moment was help with basic stuff like documentation, curriculum building. The app was way outside the immediate scope.
Huh.
But this volunteer was so driven by the mission, they just built this future resource. It showed two things. First, passion translates into unexpected, often high-level value. And second, they felt enough ownership to invest their own skill like that without being asked or feeling stretched. They weren't just doing a task, they were building the future.
That really changes how you think about it. You're not just hiring for a job description, you're finding co-owners of the future.
Exactly.
Okay, let's shift gears to the core management piece. You found these passionate co-owners. Now, how do you actually delegate tasks without sounding like, a drill sergeant, especially when you can't use a paycheck as leverage?
Right, the authority issue. The strategy, and this comes mainly from Regine's experience, is all about building ownership and autonomy. The goal is to make people feel like they're truly part of the thing.
How do you do that practically?
By giving them real responsibilities and, crucially, letting them make decisions within their area, empowering them.
She mentioned the 5 dysfunctions of a team model. Can you touch on why those dysfunctions, like lack of trust or fear of conflict, are maybe even more dangerous in a volunteer team?
Oh, absolutely. In a paid job, hierarchy and structure often force a certain level of commitment, right?
Yeah, you have to show up.
Exactly. But in a volunteer team, if trust is low, if people are afraid to have difficult conversations like calling out when something isn't working or someone isn't delivering, the whole thing can just collapse.
Yeah.
So you have to proactively build against those dysfunctions. The key part of that is stressing the collective contribution. Meaning everyone needs to understand that the final product, the success, is the sum of all their parts. My piece, your piece, the next person's piece, they're all interdependent. If everyone gets that, it creates this internal pressure to deliver for the team.
Right. It's not just a bunch of separate tasks, it's a chain. And if one link breaks,
the whole chain fails, and everyone feels it. That shared reliance builds commitment much more effectively than top-down orders.
Okay, makes sense. Now for the really tough part, accountability when things go wrong. Someone said yes, they were passionate, seemed committed, but they just didn't deliver. Since you can't dock their pay or fire them easily, how do you handle that without losing them completely?
This is where Desire's framework is, frankly, brilliant. It's a very empathetic but structured 3-part approach specifically for this non-transactional environment, essential for you, the listener, to grasp.
Okay, walk us through those 3 steps. Step 1.
Step 1, the start. Radical clarity. Eliminate all ambiguity right from the beginning.
Yeah.
Don't just ask, hey, can you help with marketing this week? That's way too vague.
Yeah.
Easy to push off.
Right.
Instead, be super specific, time-bound, and deliverable focused. Ask, okay, can you create one flyer for our main social media account, specifically for the Tuesday push? And can we get a draft to look at by Sunday at 5 p.m.? That specificity creates a clear mental contract and no room for misunderstanding.
Clarity locks it down. Got it. What about during the process? Step 2.
Step 2,
Yeah.
the process.
Yeah.
Make it public. This is key. Announce it clearly to the whole team. Hey, everyone, just confirming Sarah's taking ownership of the social media flyer, and we're all counting on having that ready for Tuesday. Now, Sarah knows the whole group is depending on her. It leverages peer accountability, a really powerful non-financial motivator.
Ah, the social pressure element. Okay. And the final step. The response when, despite all that, it still doesn't happen. This feels like the hardest part.
It is. Step 3, the end. Lead with empathy. If the task fails, you absolutely cannot react with anger or blame. That's fatal in a volunteer setting. You must show genuine empathy. Your first move is to understand why. Was there a financial issue? Exams? A family emergency? Find out what happened.
So investigate before reacting.
Yes. Then your job is to guide them forward. Maybe adjust the task, offer support, find a different way, and always make a point of commending wins, even small ones, when they happen. If you react with anger to failure, you don't just lose that volunteer, you risk damaging the trust of the entire team. They see how failure is treated.
That takes real emotional discipline, acknowledging that their life pressures might genuinely outweigh their commitment to your unpaid project at that moment.
It does. It's leadership through understanding, not command.
All right, now we're moving to the long haul. That initial buzz, the honeymoon phase, it inevitably fades. The work gets harder, it's consistent, and it's still unpaid. How do you keep that fire alive? How do you keep the team engaged without offering raises or bonuses?
This is where culture and personalization become critical. Regine really emphasized building a culture where the team sees you as a human being, balancing that necessary authority with genuine friendship. But the real engine for sustained motivation, she found, is deep personalization.
Meaning
you absolutely have to know what motivates each individual person, particularly in terms of their own career goals.
So it's not one-size-fits-all motivation.
Not at all. For one volunteer, the big reward might be putting a significant achievement on their CV, like, say, building that complex app we talked about, something that helps them land their next job.
Okay.
For someone else, maybe they really want hands-on experience facilitating workshops or developing curriculum, skills they don't get to use in their day job. You have to figure out what they value and tailor the opportunities and recognition accordingly.
Should you talk about money at all, even if you can't offer it right now? Does that help or hurt?
Regine strongly advises being transparent about the long-term financial vision. You need to be clear. Look, if and when this thing takes off and becomes profitable, here's the structure, here's how you stand to benefit down the line.
Keep the hope alive.
Exactly. It keeps that long-term incentive on the table. But in the meantime, you have to provide immediate, tangible value. Things like really strong, detailed recommendation letters, certificates of accomplishment, public recognition within the team, and maybe even externally.
So you're providing the immediate currency of professional validation while holding out the promise of future financial reward. Desire, though. He pointed to something even more fundamental, didn't he? Especially in nonprofit.
He did. It boils down to inspiration. Desire argues that, ultimately, the team has to be inspired by the leader's vision and conviction. They need to be willing to work for you, the person, almost as much as they work for the idea itself. Because in the nonprofit or volunteer space, the impact you're creating often can't be bought. So the leader's inspiration, their why, has to carry a huge amount of the emotional and motivational weight.
That makes sense. So if you, the listener, are building something new, the lesson here is that real leadership in this context is about fostering mutual contribution, all fueled by that shared vision.
Right. And when the team feels like they genuinely co-own the plan,
Yeah.
you avoid that classic project killer.
Yeah.
The feeling of, well, I didn't really agree to that, so I'm not fully committed to doing it.
Yeah, the silent withdrawal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Co-ownership prevents that.
Okay, before we wrap this up, let's quickly clarify a couple of points that came up in the sources. First, this distinction between accountability and responsibility. They sound similar, but the founders drew a line there.
They did. And it's a useful distinction. Responsibility, in their context, is about the ownership of the task, the initial commitment, the psychological acceptance. Okay, this is mine to do.
Right, taking it on.
Accountability, though, is about answering for the outcome of that task. It's the consequence, the follow-through. In a volunteer team, accountability gets stressed because everyone needs to understand that the success or failure of that task rests squarely on the person who took responsibility. It reinforces the importance of delivering.
Got it. Okay, next. Celebrating success. Should we focus more on celebrating the wins or on dissecting the losses?
Definitely celebrate the wins more. Celebration builds momentum, reinforces positive behavior, and keeps the emotional energy high. But, and this was Regine's key nuance, don't just wait for the huge final victory. Celebrate the small steps.
Like what?
Like submitting documentation on time, hitting a small recruitment target for a cohort, successfully running a meeting. Frequent, smaller recognitions keep the positive feedback loop going. Losses, on the other hand, should never be celebrated, obviously, but they absolutely must be learned from, immediately and without blame. They're data points. Lessons to avoid repeating, not excuses for finger-pointing.
Makes sense. Learn, don't blame. Okay, final question, the big one. Retention. How do you keep good people, especially maybe recent graduates or skilled folks who are always looking for those greenest pastures, jobs with actual paychecks?
This is tough, no doubt. The core strategy has to be providing a value proposition that clearly outweighs the immediate lack of pay. You have to actively leverage your organization, your project, to give them things that money can't easily buy right now, but that lead to future money or opportunity.
Like what specifically?
Like helping them build their professional network. Writing truly outstanding, detailed recommendation letters for grad school or jobs. Connecting them with potential partners or mentors. Using your platform to give them visibility.
So, you're essentially making the case that the experience, the connections, the skills they gain by volunteering with you will ultimately be more valuable to their career than the money they could be making right now in an entry-level paid role.
Exactly. But you can't just hope they figure that out. You have to package that value proposition clearly right from the start. They need to see volunteering not just as helping you, but as a strategic investment in their own professional capital, with you as the facilitator of that growth. Outro.
This has been incredibly insightful. A real look at leading effectively when you don't have that formal badge of authority. So, to quickly recap the core takeaways for you listening. First, root your whole endeavor in radical clarity about your identity and the problem you're solving.
That foundation.
Second, prioritize passion when building your core team. Find those co-builders, then align skills. Third, drive accountability through crystal clear expectations, making commitments public, and always leading with empathy when things go wrong.
Absolutely. Specificity, publicity, empathy.
And finally, keep the fire alive by understanding individual motivations, offering tailored professional value, and constantly reinforcing the core inspiration behind it all.
And maybe a final thought for you, something that really stood out from these founders' journeys. Don't let anyone, not your friends, not your doubts, not perceived limitations, tell you your idea is too unrealistic or crazy. If you've genuinely identified a need, if you feel that spark of conviction we talked about, trust it. Go find the people who resonate with that dream. There is an audience for your vision.
Find those co-builders who get why it's necessary and then work together to make that crazy idea real. So the challenge for you, the listener, is to think. Which of these principles that are radical clarity, the public accountability with empathy, or the personalized motivation, which one will you consciously apply to your very next project?
Good question to ponder.
Definitely. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.